Hi there. Welcome to the Seth and Gentry show, or as you might call it,
The Gentry and Seth show.
yes. This is Gentry Estes with dogs247.com and the greater 24/7 sports giant network that is quickly taking over the earth.
Absolutely.
And I'm Seth Emerson with the Macon Telegraph and the Columbus Ledger-Inquirer, whose newspaper should hopefully be bought by the founder of Amazon.com at some point before the end of this video, or maybe not. We're back filming the first Gentry and Seth show.
Back by popular demand, too.
Yeah, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know. People have been asking about it. Which
Yeah.
is, and it's because of the production value.
It is.
Clearly.
Yeah, nobody can see this, but we have a huge production team and a studio audience just out there. Everyone stay quiet.
A producer, lights, telling us we're looking off the screen right now.
Doing so many things. You're probably not tuning into this for the production values. You're probably tuning in for the expertise. So let's impart what we can of that. Gentry, we are at, what is this, day 5 of preseason?
I've lost
It's
count.
day 5.
Oh, really, yeah.
It is Tuesday when we're filming this. There'll be a scrimmage Wednesday. We're going to try and talk in generalities because there'll be more injuries and there may be big news for all we know. Nothing on the horizon.
We're in the middle of a two-a-days right now.
Right.
They practiced this morning, and we're kind of waiting for the afternoon practice. Mark Rick just walked out there, so I think it should be pretty soon. But
early impressions, Gentry, we're kind of getting the same thing we did in the spring, which is you hear from veteran players about young guys that are impressing. It's Leonard Floyd on the defensive end is the guy that gets the most mention. He's got a hand injury, but he probably shouldn't be out that long. Reggie Davis, receiver, kind of out of nowhere, is the one on the offense that's getting the most mention. Watts Dantzler coming out of nowhere, not out of nowhere, but deep on the depth chart to get some first-team reps. Anything surprising you early?
A couple of things. On Dantzler, he's getting first-team reps at right guard, but I think some of that has to do with Chris Burnett. Burnett's still recovering from a shoulder injury. He wasn't able to lift during the summer as much as he would have wanted, so maybe not as strong. Yeah. So they had kind of said coming in they were going to be careful with him. So I think Dantzler is doing well, and he's kind of in that 7, 8, 9 man possible rotation this year. I think Dantzler is still behind Burnett. I think Chris Burnett.
All right, well, let's talk about the O-line, because that's to me, it's an intriguing question of whether they're looking for truly the best 5 right now, and those 5 are going to be the ones that are going to play, or whether they're going to play 7, 8, 9 men. What do you think is going to happen there?
At least 7, and they did that last year
with Mark Beard and
Austin Long on there at the end of the year, and I think that it's not too much of a reach to think that Xavier Ward, Colton Houston, and possibly Watts Dantzler are Beard, or Greg Pike if he's healthy. He's dealing with an ankle right now.
And that would make 10.
Yeah,
along with the 5 returning starters.
And they're not going to rotate 10 guys in there, but I think there's a competition maybe between those 10, and they all have a realistic shot. I wouldn't overlook some of these guys. I wouldn't overlook Xavier Ward. I think Colton Houston is a guy that they're still giving some time to get back into it, but I think they're very interested to see what he can do.
The nut of it, and what fans out there want to know, is does this make the line better? Does this mean they'll be able to block Clowney? Does this mean they'll...
Here's what I think will happen. I think the starting 5 against Clemson will be the starting 5
that would be my bet.
It's just the safe thing.
It was what was at the first day of practice.
And you don't have any testing ground here. You need to be ready to go the first game, and so you need to put 5 guys out there that can play.
Yeah.
And they all played last year. It's a safe thing to do. I would be surprised if those aren't the 5, but I'd also be surprised if you don't see some guys rotating in during the course of that game.
It'll be interesting to see though, like how much you rotate, because Mark Rick talked about when I asked him this question early on that there is a cohesion factor. This isn't like the D-line. You and I both believe that legitimately on the D-line this year they are going to rotate.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to get into what happened last year with why they didn't rotate on the D-line, because that'll take another 10, 15 minutes. But you want to rotate on the D-line. We saw in the Alabama game and even Nebraska that there's a fatigue factor. But on the O-line, cohesion matters a little more. So I'm still curious and I'm still unsure just how deep they're going to go. I mean, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9 play, but not more than like one series here or there.
Right. Again, how it was last year. I think Beard would come in 4 series into the game, usually the first one of the second quarter, something like that. I don't think it's a reach to think that'll be the case again, but it's been such a story with that team, with the offensive line, the uncertainty since the spring. I mean, you're going to have to get it settled. And I think they do. I think when you come out the first day and the 5 are the 5 from last year, that tells you that's kind of where it is.
I just don't see John Diaz not
right.
part of that line. He's too good not.
Well, in Dallas, he's a 2-year starter, and Burnett's a guy who was all SEC. I mean, who do you sit? It's a good problem to have, though, because, I mean, as you look at that group, they have so many more options now than they did the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's really the only problem on the offense. You feel like something's going to come up. The offense is not going to be 100% all season. But if they can get that old line sorted out, what's going to stop them?
I guess when you go into the scrimmage, what are you expecting out of that tomorrow? Because I think most people, as it was during the spring, would expect the offense to kind of have the way with it. I mean, that's a young defense.
But the defense had some good moments in the spring, and they came out of that defense with I wouldn't say a set starting 11, but I think the starting 11 on G-Day for that defense is going to be pretty close, if not exactly what.
The D-line
except for Josh Harvey Clemens.
The D-line could be a little different, and also you understand. I mean, they're going to be starting off in nickel against Clemson, so you're in a situation now where you need 5 DBs.
They're going to be in 4-2-5 like almost the whole way against Clemson, probably.
Right, and I think that also I think the offense was probably a little vanilla this spring. They didn't. Gurley didn't play a whole lot in these scrimmages. Marshall didn't play a whole lot in these scrimmages, and that ain't going to be the case tomorrow. They're going to test that D a little more, and it's going to be interesting for me to just obviously it's a closed scrimmage, so we can only tell so much. But when you look at the numbers, if Aaron Murray's got 6 touchdown passes and threw for 400 yards, that's not a real good sign.
The youth of that secondary going forward, and you don't really know too much in terms of these scrimmages. You can tell a little, like you said, if Aaron Murray or Hudson Mason or Bryce Ramsey and Christian LeMay and Parker Welch have big passing days, then you might be a little worried about that secondary. But I think you feel good about Swan at either the number 1 cornerback or the nickelback, whatever he ends up playing with Josh Harvey Clemens out that first game. And you think you feel good about Trey Matthews, but you don't know for sure until you actually play. But then you got questions of strong safety. Is Sheldon Dawson ready to do this from the start at the number 2 cornerback job? What about, and like we said, they'll be in a 4-2-5 most of that time. That third cornerback job, that one is open. And there's a lot of questions still in this secondary.
I think Langley or Wiggins one is probably your third cornerback, but it all depends on what do you want to do with the 5th spot. Do you want to put a Connor Norman in there and then look for another strong safety? Do you want to put Damian Swan in there, look for another cornerback?
Yeah.
Or do you want to put one of the freshmen like a Brendan Langley in that star position? So I think that they're going to have to look at this and determine, one thing's going to affect another.
Yeah.
If Shaq Fluker comes on, it makes it more likely that Connor Norman's your star.
What do you think of the idea that, and I've noticed this since the spring, that there might be a little bit too much optimism about this defense sometimes? There was such optimism coming out of the spring, and it is true that while they have just 4 returning starters, the other 7 that you project in there, unless Connor Norman's one of them, are all guys who are 4- and 5-star recruits. So it's just a matter of whether the youth and inexperience turns into something right away and gels right away. But the thing is, what if it doesn't? Like there's a bunch of questions at a bunch of different spots.
Go back to a year ago. This time last year, we were all wondering about the offense.
Yeah.
That turned out to be one of the best offenses in school history, if not the best season in school history.
Freshman at tailback.
So you don't know, and I think there's a lot of talent on that defense, but obviously a lot of questions. To me, it's not necessarily the secondary as much as it is inside linebacker. I think that's the spot that would concern me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're not quite sold on Ramik Wilson yet. He obviously has the size, but are you looking around to see if Ramik is walking in right now? Because I think he's out on the practice field.
No, I mean, sold. He's a guy who's been here a couple of years. He hadn't played a whole lot. You don't really know what to expect. I think that's really the case all over that defense. You've got a lot of guys who have been here, but they haven't played a whole lot, so it's just impossible really to know what to expect.
And the D-line's interesting because they are going to play like 7 or 8 guys, and who are the nose tackles? Well, he's not really classifying them as noses and ends anymore, and I actually kind of believe him on that because...
Well, if you're a nickel, there really isn't. I mean, you got the 2.
And they're going to be in nickel so much. I mean, Garrison Smith is a defensive end, but he's going to play inside. There were times last year Cornelius Washington was playing inside, even though he was a defensive end.
Again, there are teams that are going to play where they go to a base 3-4, but that'll matter. But Clemson's not one of them. And I think they're looking at this as 2. They'll need 2. And there will be some rotation in that game, but I do not think 6 or 8 guys will play. And we're hearing that number thrown around a lot. I think they're going to whittle that down to probably 4 or 5 for that game.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, because it being Clemson rather than Buffalo, how confident do you feel going that deep in the bench? I mean,
Sure.
And again, I said I didn't want to get into this, and we're at 10 minutes, and we're going to wrap this up quickly. But the reason they didn't play too many people last year on the D-line was not because they didn't have the bodies. It was because guys like Mike Thornton, Ray Drew, and Sterling Bailey at the end of last year were not experienced. They didn't feel comfortable throwing them in there against Alabama.
That's right.
This year, are they going to get those guys to play right away so they have that experience? I don't know. It's hard to do if the first two opponents are potentially the toughest two opponents you're going to play all year.
Yeah, and I think they don't really have a choice, and it's the same thing in the secondary. You don't have a choice between Shaq Wiggins and Brendan Langley. Somebody will have to play.
Yeah.
Maybe both of them. So I think it's going to be interesting to see that defense and see how it works out, because I do think there's a lot of talent there, and I think the upside is real high where it kills you in that first game, and such a big loss as Josh Harvey-Clemens.
Yeah.
Because so much was being tied around. And I wouldn't normally say that about one
Mark
player.
Richt is poo-pooing that, but I'm sorry. He was that.
And we've seen enough out there
yeah.
to be able to see what this kid can do. And I mean, him and Matthews together, if those are the two safeties in their base defense, that is a nasty combination. I know that's not experienced, but I admire that Georgia in the spring kind of took a chance with those two, maybe two that didn't have the position down pat as much as some others, and said, all right, these are our guys. This is who we want. And
Trey Matthews,
the upside is off the charts.
Trey Matthews will be the first player in Todd Grantham's 4 years who will start the opener, who is a true freshman.
Wow.
He's relied on veterans the whole way until now. And that's because he was here in the spring.
You know, there would be it's not including JUCOs.
Right. Was there a JUCO?
Well, John Jenkins, maybe. Well, actually,
Jenkins didn't start.
Jakar Hamilton did, though.
Jakar Hamilton.
Jakar Hamilton
Wow.
first year.
Wow,
Going
that's
way
right,
back
2010. Yeah. But John Jenkins did not start the first one. That was Kwame Gathers who started 2011 opener, and then Jenkins got there. All right, well, let's save a bunch of stuff for the next show. And we got to get out to practice. All right, thanks, everybody.